Hi Mama, welcome back to Mama Flow Studio. Today we are breaking down diaphragmatic breathing and connecting with our pelvic floor. The first trimester is such an amazing time to really focus and connect on the mechanics of diaphragmatic breathing. Oftentimes it is a time of intense nausea and fatigue, which can be intense on so many different levels. And one of the things that you know that you can do during that time, even if you are so tired, is working on breathing. And why it makes sense during the first trimester is because throughout the rest of the trimesters, we start to see very rapid change of the body and of alignment of the body, which naturally affects how we breathe. So that practice in the first trimester and really nailing down those mechanics can help combat some of those natural changes to the breath that happen in the second and third trimester and allow you to find those subtle changes because you know what you're trying to feel in getting that rib expansion and getting that pelvic floor relaxation, so that in the second and third trimester you can still, as much as possible, try to keep that same quality of breath. So let's work on that today. All you're going to need is either a yoga mat. If you'd like to do this in a seated position, that works as well. You can even do this seated on a birth ball if you already have one. That's great too. And you will also need some sort of scarf. Mine is very wrinkly, but that doesn't matter. You can use a scarf. You can also use a long resistance band. So go ahead and grab those props and let's get started. All right, Mama, allow me to nerd out here a little bit on the anatomy so that we understand what are the big muscle groups that we're working on when we are diaphragmatically breathing. Obviously, diaphragmatically, we are working with the diaphragm, which is at the base of the rib cage, and the pelvic floor, which is at the base of your pelvis. Now, these two big muscles work together while we breathe. On the inhale, the diaphragm contracts down. That sends pressure down to the pelvic floor, and that pressure allows the pelvic floor to relax and lengthen. And on the exhale, there's a very subtle reflexive engagement of the pelvic floor, no active engagement. It slightly contracts up, sends pressure back up to the diaphragm, and it comes back up. So the diaphragm and the pelvic floor do this beautiful dance together as you breathe. Inhale down, exhale, they come back up. I like to think of the visual of two jellyfish that are dancing down and up, down and up. Now, another name for this breath is called 360 breathing. And so that's finding expansion around the rib cage, 360 degrees. And that expansion of the rib cage actually allows that diaphragm to contract down. So the more we can find expansion in the rib cage, the more we can find that beautiful dance of the pelvic floor and of that diaphragm. So that's what we're going to practice today. You're going to take your scarf, or if you have a long resistance band, you can even in a pinch use a tie, and you're going to take that long and you're going to wrap it around your rib cage. You want to think like base of the bra here, right at the bottom of the bra line. So bring that together. Now you have the opposite ends of the scarf in either hand. Just a slight little hug here of that scarf. So on your inhale, we're breathing into that scarf. So you feel all sides of your rib cage press into that scarf with the intention of sending that breath down towards the pelvic floor. You'll get a little bit of belly expansion, and then you'll feel that pelvic floor relax. It's almost like a stretching, blossoming sensation at the bottom. And then on that exhale, we release all of our air. Feel the rib cage come back in. That scarf comes back in as we exhale through the mouth. So we're not doing any active engagement of the pelvic floor. We're just releasing all of our air through the mouth. So let's try that all together. A little subtle squeeze of that scarf around the rib cage. Deep inhale breath. Breathe into the rib cage. Send that breath down. Expand through the belly, down into the pelvic floor. And exhale. Long exhale as you release all of your air. Keep exhaling until you want to cough. Deep inhale. And a deep exhale. Good. Keep breathing on your own here. Couple of tips. Breathe out like you are breathing, trying to blow candles out. So, and as long as you can until you feel like you have no air to release from your lungs. So it may feel like at the end, then you go straight into that inhale. A long exhale will help you get a long inhale. So let's try that again. Inhale into your scarf, expand 360. Good, and release. 3 major tips for you here that address kind of the common issues that I see with 360 breathing. One is breathing into the rib cage, so you're finding that expansion around the ribs. You feel the ribs pressing into that scarf, but you see a little bit of lifting from the shoulders, so it'll look a little bit like this. So notice there's just a subtle lift of my shoulders. So I'm breathing into this scarf. I feel my ribs pressing out into the scarf, but instead of setting the breath down, I'm sending the breath up. So focus on expanding into the ribs and then think about directionality, sending that breath down towards your belly, a little bit of an expansion, and then down into the pelvic floor. Second issue that I commonly see is not getting that expansion into the scarf, and you're getting more expansion into the belly. And this is really common, especially as we get later on into pregnancy, because it's really hard to get that rib cage expansion. Is I just see people breathing straight into the belly. Your belly is really pooching out on the inhale and it's coming in on the exhale, but you're finding just a little subtle touch of the ribs on that scarf as you inhale. So instead of doing that, I want you to think about breathing into the scarf first, really trying to maximize the expansion around the rib cage, then sending the breath into the belly, just a little bit of belly expansion, and then down in the pelvic floor to release. So that's tip number 2. Last tip to address a common issue is taking too short of an inhale, and some people just take a huge gasp of air on their inhale and they can't control where that breath is going. Is it going up? Is it going down? What's happening? So what I like to do is to practice a Darth Vader breath, which is a slight constriction at the back of the throat, and it allows you to just seep in that air versus taking a huge gust in through the nose. So I will try to do it loudly in my microphone so that you can tell. So I'm creating a slight constriction in the back of my throat, and I'm going to seep the air through my nose. So notice with that inhale breath, I kind of sound like this fuzzy Darth Vader inhale, and that allowed me to really lengthen the inhale so I could work on finding that expansion through the rib cage, through the belly, and down through the pelvic floor. So you can try that little subtle close of the throat, almost like you're wheezing your air in. So let's try all of those together, and then I will leave that to you to practice. Keep practicing throughout your first trimester, even if you're in your second trimester or third. Just keep practicing that as much as you can to help find that connection between the pelvic floor, between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. Here we go. Grabbing that scarf, wrapping around the rib cage. Deep inhale breath, wheeze, slight close, constriction of the throat. Long, long exhale out through the mouth. Deep breath in. Shoulders stay frozen. Long exhale out. 2 more. Inhale. Long exhale. Last one. Inhale. Full breath out. Beautiful. Release. Awesome job, Mama. Awesome practice. Remember, this is going to take some time, especially if this is your first time practicing diaphragmatic breathing, the first time you've been trying to connect with your pelvic floor. Maybe a little bit of a puzzle piece to try to connect your brain, what you're telling your body to do, and then the muscles to actually follow. So give it some time, give it lots of practice. I want you to first really focus on this diaphragmatic breath before we layer on the hug the baby breath, which is finding the deep core engagement, pelvic floor squeeze and lift, and the wrapping of the abs. Because one of the common misconceptions of pelvic floor health and pelvic floor strength is that we need to do Kegels and do that singular solo motion of that pelvic floor engagement. But most of the mamas that I work with actually suffer from pelvic floor tension, and more Kegels and more engagement without learning how to release can actually exacerbate that. Not only can it create issues for you during pregnancy and postpartum, but it can make birth, it can make labor longer, more difficult, and actually have more effect on your pelvic floor afterwards if we don't address that and if first we don't focus on connecting with that pelvic floor relaxation. So I promise you we will work on the engagement. That's part of the strengthening. We want to make sure that you can both relax and engage. So work on this relaxation, this diaphragmatic breath first, and then we will add on our hug the baby breath. If you have any questions, mama, drop your questions below in the comments and I'm happy to help, or you can always send me an email. All right, mama, enjoy your breathing and I will see you next time.